Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you would join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Tennessee. Our guest is here today to celebrate book one in his Wingfeather series. It's called On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. Please welcome to the show, Andrew Peterson. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
I'm excited to have you on. On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, this is being re-released. Real excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the paperback edition coming out this summer. Yeah. Yes.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about this chapter in the series.
Well, it's a 4-book series, plus a few ancillary fun kind of extras. It was written, let me think about when I wrote it. It was first published in 2008. I started writing it about 5 years before that. So we're going on like 20 years since I first started writing this story, which is pretty amazing. And to my great shock, the books came out and just kind of kept doing okay. And so one of the wonderful things that happened in the wake of the COVID thing was that Penguin Random House is going to re-release the books in hardback, which was already amazing. I just couldn't believe that they were doing that with all new illustrations and the whole thing. And then COVID hit, and I thought, well, so much for that. I guess nobody's going to really know about this book coming out again. But then this wonderful thing happened where I just decided to start reading the book on Facebook. I would just go on every night at 7:00 and read to whoever wanted to listen. And over the course of the next year, read all 4 books in the series. And it was just this delightful connection with a whole bunch of families that were stuck at home and on lockdown, And it was just it was kind of a shot in the arm for the series. So it's just been a blast to see the books just kind of taken off. And now the next stage is this paperback, which I can't wait to see.
Yeah, and it's also become an animated series, right?
It is, yeah. The finale, I don't know when this airs, but the finale of season 1 happens this Friday, and so we start. It's just been crazy. I know I keep saying crazy, but I just keep pinching myself. My wife and I keep going, how is this happening? Just because usually when you make something, like I'm a singer-songwriter, so like I've made records over the years, and usually with an album, you work really hard on the front end to record the thing and write all the songs, and then the album comes out and there's this burst of activity, There all the promotional stuff, and you're on a promotional tour, and then in a few months the needle kind of like tilts back to normal, and you're like, all right, what is the next thing I'm going to do? And so it's just been so bizarre in the best way with these books to have written them so many years ago, and then to just still see them finding places and finding homes. And so that part of that was the series. It was like finishing the story. I was like, well, I guess that's it for the Wingfeather Saga. This was, I don't know when, 2015 maybe. And then I struck up this partnership with my buddy Chris Wall, who was a animated television producer. He was a guy that worked on all of the VeggieTales stuff, a lot of the VeggieTales stuff. And we cooked up this idea to try to make this into a TV show. And 6 years later, it happened. So it's just been pretty bonkers.
That's but a wonderful bonkers.
Yeah, definitely. A Wonderful Bonkers is going to be the title of my new memoir.
Hey, I love that during the COVID thing, as you referred to it, and I think that's a great way to refer to it. You decided to read the story with kids all over the country. was there something more than just I got to do something to keep myself sane during this time? Was there a spark, an intention that kind of led you down that path?
Yeah. Well, I wrote these books to be read aloud books. Like my family and I, when the kids were little, we read together all the time, as often as we could. And I felt like it was hard to find the kind of book that I really wanted to share with my kids. And we'd read Narnia and Watership Down and some George MacDonald books, that kind of thing. And we were kind of running out of stuff. And I had always wanted to write a book. And so when I wrote it, all of the books, I wrote them with the hope that families would read these aloud. So it's been really cool to see that happen. So when the COVID, when the pandemic happened, I was like, our kids were kind of home from college, because the colleges have been shut down, and we were experiencing what it was like to be a little bit isolated. And I thought, well, these books are out, I might as well just try this thing. And so, it was an experiment. I thought I would just try the first book, see how it went. But it turned out to have all of these, be a surprising blessing. Like, it wasn't just the volume of people. There were a ton of people that it just so happened were hungry for exactly that thing. I remember the first week there were 99,000 people tuning in to one of the readings, and it didn't stay there. It kind of whittled down but it was still a lot of people. Every night we would, and then, it felt like a way of connecting with them. We would tell them about what our days were like, and, people would send in pictures of their kids, and it became this little mini community of people that were going on this journey together. So reading together is one of the best ways to spend time.
Well, I certainly agree, and that is the main reason I launched the Reading with Your Kids podcast back in 2017. I didn't realize I knew that when you read to your kids that they learn how to read. And so that was obviously something that I wanted for my kids. But I launched the podcast specifically because I know that the relationship that I have with my now adult kids, 27 and 30, and it's a great relationship. And that was built when we were reading with them, when they were babies, when my son was in the womb. I was like a madman. I was reading to him in the womb. But I know that the times that we spent reading with the kids when they were 2 and 3 and 5 and even older, 7, 9, 10, was so valuable in developing that bond and developing that sense of family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Same. And in fact, our kids are all grown now too. I just became a grandpa about 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it occurred to me at some point when our kids were in high school, my wife realized, at some time back there, we read aloud for the last time together. It happened and we didn't know it when it happened. It just kind of went away because the kids got older and life got busy. And so it was a sad realization that, like, oh man, I wish we had known that it was going to be our last read aloud together. But it is a precious season. Like it's something that is going to end one day. So as a parent, I want to tell younger parents, like, don't miss it. Like, spend time. And it's not just stories. It's sharing art together, whether it's watching a good movie or listening to good music. I cared about raising my kids on really good music. And so, getting to go to concerts with them when they were teenagers is as precious a thing as it is to sit down and have some author spin a tale.
Yeah.
Particularly at a certain age, there was a season where the read aloud was one of the primary ways that we connected as a family. Yeah.
Speaking of concerts, I had the pleasure of taking my 2 then teenage kids to see you in concert with Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Oh, wow.
Some in north of Boston, and it was a lot of fun. One of the things that I love about your music is you are a storyteller, not only on the page and through writing these middle grade novels, but your songs tell stories. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between telling a story through song, and other than the fact that one is 3 minutes and other could be, a couple hundred pages, but the difference between telling a story through song and the difference and the written word.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't really articulated this before, but people talk about how, some songs are story songs, and in a way they are, and in another way they're not really story songs. They're just songs that are grounded in stories. So it's like, I love James Taylor. He's one of my favorite one of my heroes. Paul Simon, Rich Mullins. The thing that I love about a lot of their writing is the groundedness of it. They'll mention the name of a city or a street or a person's name, or some little vignette from a moment in time that the song is getting at. And we call those story songs. And it's not that the songs tell a story as much as the songs hint at a story. It's like they're giving you a little window into a bigger story, and our imaginations get to fill in the blanks sometimes. I mean, a strict story song would be like some of the old Irish folk murder ballads, and like that kind of stuff, where it's actually a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the stuff I do is mainly just they're songs that tend to look at my life as a story. I think our lives may be best understood as stories. And as a Christian, I tend to think that, the Bible is maybe best understood as a story. Above all, it's like an account of the story that God is telling. And so I think of the kinds of songs that I write as these little snapshots, some moment of insight or a moment of longing or pain. And the song is a way for you to try to get to the bottom of it and understand what was happening there. And you're right, it's 3 minutes long. It takes a lot longer than that to write it. But yeah, you can just kind of get in and out in 3 minutes. And one of the miracles of songwriting is that in 3.5 or so minutes, a life can change. Like, I've been one of those lives. I've been driving down the road and heard some song that just completely ambushed me. And I found myself crying without knowing why. And so songs have this real potency that no other art form has in quite the same way. Whereas to write a book, oh my goodness, being a songwriter does not make one a good novel writer. And I would even say, like, being a songwriter doesn't make one a good poet. Like, poets try to write songs, they'd probably be bad songs. And when songwriters try to write poetry, you can tell it's not quite right. So each discipline has its own thing. So I had to start at zero as with these books. As far as the craft goes, like, I love words and wordplay and kind of the savoring of a good sentence. That's all kind of part of the same wheelhouse. But yeah, I had to just learn a brand new craft when it came to writing the books. And the thing that I would say is the same, though, and I think this is largely the same across all disciplines, is the fact that when you're writing a song, you start with this flash of an idea. I think Robert Frost said that a poem begins with a catch in the throat. There's a thing I've got to get to the bottom of. And then you have this quick vision of what the song could potentially be. And then you get out your guitar or your journal, and there's an immediate just crash into the valley of despair because you realize, I can't do this. I'm the worst, and you do this long fight to try to make the song. And when you finally push through that slump, you can find your way into the song again, and the song is never quite as good as the initiating vision. And you just have to be okay with that, and then you try again. But that pattern, which my friend John Hendricks, who's an artist, pointed out, is true in the visual arts and filmmaking. And it's like there's this real excitement that comes at the beginning, and then you realize art is work. And you've got to fight through the tough stuff to get to the good part. Farming is the same way, and so that was the same. So having been a songwriter for several years and taught me to recognize the pattern, so that whenever I sat down to write the book, I wasn't surprised by it. I was like, ooh, I know what's happening now. This isn't when I quit. This is when I fight harder,
I'm really happy that you mentioned that songwriting, writing a novel, farming, it's work. And it's not, I think a lot of people have this vision that, you get the spark of inspiration, you sit down and it's like you throw up and it just comes out on the page and then you're done and then you walk away. But the reality is you might not throw up. You just might get a little bit in your mouth, but then you have to take it out and you have to work it, and you have to develop the whole idea.
It's very true. Yeah.
I also love that you talked about not only reading with your kids when they're young, but enjoying all different types of art. That is one of the things that again, we encourage here in the podcast, and it's something that I feel blessed that I was able to do with my kids, especially with artists like you and Stephen Curtis Chapman and so many of the other great Christian artists. And I don't think people realize how valuable it can be, even if you're not a Christian, just sitting down and enjoying music with your kids, talking about what's the singer singing about, what values are being expressed in these songs, and asking your kids, hey, is this the kind of value that you want to be part of your life?
Yeah, I think teaching your kids how to enjoy art, not just as consumers, which just brings up this picture of you're a sponge and you're soaking things up, but as somebody who's sitting down at a nice meal, and thinking of the art that we consume as as healthy food instead of fast food. Which isn't to say that sometimes it's not fun to go get a McDonald's burger. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you want to be entertained by something that's kind of mindless. Like I totally get that. But know that you're doing that when you're doing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a choice that you're making. I'm now going to eat something bad for me because it's a holiday. Mm-hmm. But if you live your whole life like that without paying attention to what you're eating, then it will prove to be unhealthy. And so I think art is kind of the same way, that that I really wanted my kids to be to consider what they were consuming, consider what they were experiencing, which actually means that as a Christian, it opens up the door to all kinds of cool stuff. It means that it broadens the palette. You don't just have to listen to Christian music. You can listen for the truth that's hiding in all kinds of music, and films and whatever else. So yeah, I think that's really important. I also think that I remember being in high school and music. There's a time in most kids' lives, I think, when music just becomes this really important thing to you. Like the stuff that you're choosing, what's in your library, is just, you see it as a reflection of yourself, or there's something in this music that is articulating something that you don't have the words for. And I think that this may not always be true, but I think sometimes that, like, if you're a parent of a teenager and that teenager is listening to their music loud enough for you to hear it, then it's probably because they want you to hear it. Mm-hmm. They probably want you to know something about themselves. They want you to like what they like, And so it's been one of the great joys in my life is to just geek out over a band with my kids. It starts out with me as the tastemaker. I get to be the one to feed them the Paul Simon and the James Taylor and the Counting Crows and whatever, the stuff that I'm like, this is great music, kids. And now that they're all adults, they're the ones that are feeding me. They're the ones going, Pops, you got to listen to this record. And man, to raise kids that take their art seriously is just wonderful, because then they end up exposing you to all these wonderful things. Books, good books. My son was just telling me about this book of theology that he loved that I can't wait to read, because he's the one teaching me now, So anyway, I think that the arts are just such a wonderful point of connection between lonely people. And sometimes those two groups of people are parents and their kids.
I love that. Art is a connection between two lonely people. And yeah, sometimes members of a family can be very lonely and not notice that. Yeah.
I think so. And getting to just wordlessly listen to a song that moves you both is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I just love this. And like you were saying, the cool thing is when you connect with your kids with music, they do introduce you to all sorts of really great stuff. I mean, I love listening to the Jay Gauss Band when I was a kid back in the 70s, and I still love listening to them once in a while, but if it was the only thing that I was listening to, I think my mind would just kind of fold in on itself.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. There's like, I'm a little overwhelmed by Spotify because it's like every day there's somebody told me the statistics of how many albums get uploaded to Spotify every day. It's this insane amount of music. There's just this tidal wave. And so you need somebody to help you sift through it all, and young people are a great way to do that. But I'm so encouraged in the same way that I don't want my kids to look down their noses at old music. I want them to look at old music and see it as valuable and understand the lineage of music that got us to where we are. And I also think it's important for older people like me to not look down their nose at new music, to look at the stuff that people are putting out and really look for the good in it. Man, some of the best music that I've ever heard is being made by people a third my age, and it's so thrilling. It's just a wonderful amount of really great art. And it's also a way to understand, like I said, the hearts of young people. I just think it's wonderful. So that cultivating a posture of curiosity about the world, not just looking at all the evil and the danger in the world, but also look for all the beauty and the richness and the wonder that's out there too, because we're all image bearers.
Absolutely. So on the edge of the dark sea of darkness, I need to ask you about that title, because it's on the edge of the dark sea. Okay, cool. The dark sea of darkness. That's really kind of going in there and dark. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, that was a joke. It's not. It's not meant to be dark. It's so funny. Like it's playing against the trope of like I feel like every fantasy novel's got a dark sea in it. But no, that part of the there's a little bit of goofiness in the story. Like it's like Harry Potter. It's like, one of the things I love about the way J.K. Rowling wrote those books is that you've got names like Hogwarts and Dumbledore, and they're goofy names. But then you forget that they're goofy because the story is so rich, And so I kind of started from the same place where I was just like making up the names of the oceans and the mountains and the whatever, and some of them were just silly names. So the Dark Sea of Darkness was one of them. And so it's so funny. I had somebody email me when the title of the book was announced way back in 2008. A concerned fan emailed me and was like, "Hey, I don't know if you noticed, but the title of your book is redundant." How could we not have noticed that? Like a whole publishing company, like editors, the whole thing. Like, of course we noticed it. Like, that's the joke. So anyway, I wrote the person back and said, "Well, I don't know if you noticed, but you don't have a sense of humor." I didn't actually say that, but I wanted to. But then it was so funny. Just this week, somebody emailed me to say that they had finally gotten around to reading the books after years of like a family member telling them that they should read them. And the reason they were resistant was that they thought the title sounded so lazy and redundant. And then they read the first chapter and were like, "Oh, it's on purpose." And they were like, "I'm sorry that for 10 years I just thought that you or whatever." So anyway, it's meant to be a little the title of book 2 is North or Be Eaten. So, I think you can tell that there's a little bit of a little bit of a wink to it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the book is being released. I know that there's some companion material that's being released with the book as well.
Yeah, so we've got a few years ago this came out, but it's called Wingfeather Tales. So it's like a collection of short stories written by some author friends of mine set in this world. And then there's Pembroke's Creaturepedia, which is a compendium of a lot of the creatures. And we're about to release sometime later this year, after the paperback, there's a book called A Ranger's Guide to Glipwood Forest, which I finished writing about a month ago. And so, yeah, there's just all these fun little things. And the animated series, they have the most amazing fun products, like action figures and drinking glasses, like the old Burger King glasses with the superheroes on them, Mm-hmm. We did that for the Wingfeather Saga. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that kids can find out to kind of augment their imaginations.
That's awesome. Anything new on the horizon from you?
The biggest thing is just getting across the finish line for season 1 of this show. Mm-hmm. I'm about to leave on tour in a couple weeks for my annual Easter tour. And then I have a book that I am trying to find the time to write. I've got a new book coming, not a Wingfeather book, a totally different thing that I'm trying to write. And I have little tingles every now and then of wanting to make another album, but it might be a minute. But
okay.
Yeah, there's just a lot of. It's one of the problems in my life is there's sometimes I feel overwhelmed by how many fun things there are to do, and so I'm trying to keep my head on straight.
Well, I know one of the fun things people are going to want to do is to visit your website. So please tell them where they should go.
Yeah, just andrew-peterson.com. And if you want to watch the show, it's angel.com. And you can find the show for free there.
We've had a really great time speaking to the author of On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. Our guest has been Andrew Peterson. Hey, Andrew, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. We'll see you around.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And we hope that you'll join us for the next exciting episode of the show. To make sure you don't miss a moment of the show, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks going out to my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Jordan Saley, Will Cheever, Cassandra Masonet, Stephanie Davila. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.